Hi, welcome to our channel of IGNOU audiobooks, Indira Gandhi National Open University, School of Law, SOL, Diploma in Paralegal Practice, DIPP, BLE 004 Rural Local Self-Governance, Block-1 Constitutional Framework, Unit 1 Structure and Composition, 1.1 Introduction. India is known as the world's largest democracy. However, it is a sad reality that a vast majority of Indians, particularly the millions of citizens who live in villages, are largely dependent upon remote and unresponsive government structures, which are characterized by corruption and lack of transparency. In many parts of rural India, there has always existed a great chasm between the people and their government. Rural people rarely receive information or have any say in and about the plans and actions of the government. They lack ways to influence policies, programs, or resource allocations for development. Many have no effective means of participating in shaping their future, and government officials are not always accountable to the communities they are supposed to serve. This has been one of the major reasons for the slow or even non-existent improvement of the conditions of life in most parts of rural India. It is only when every individual experiences greater freedom, voice and opportunity that each will fully bring her or his creative powers to bear on solving the problems of the community. The challenges facing rural India can never be solved by top-down, bureaucratic interventions. The critical needs of communities, such as health, sanitation, clean water, education, and livelihood, can only be met locally through local responsibility, accountability, and action, utilizing local resources to the greatest possible extent. The recognition of this truth is the driving force behind the creation and sustenance of Gram Panchayat. In India, the philosophy of Panchayati Raj is deeply steeped in the tradition and culture of rural India and is by no means a new concept. Panchayati Raj institutions, PRIs, established under the 73rd Amendment to the Constitution provided a system of self-governance at the village level that had constitutional status. With the constitutional recognition of the PRIs, independent India has begun a process with the potential to create genuine democracy at the village level. It represents a remarkable opportunity to transform the face of rural India and bring to fruition Gandhiji's vision of India being an aggregate of village republics. In this unit, we will briefly trace the historical evolution of Panchayati Raj institutions. We will then discuss the 73rd Constitutional Amendment pertaining to the structure and composition of and elections to PRIs. We will conclude by analyzing the functioning of Panchayati Raj institutions. 1.2 Objectives. After studying this unit, you should be able to 9. Describe the historical evolution of PRIs, 9. Explain the relevant constitutional provisions pertaining to PRIs, and 9. Identify issues that need to be addressed for strengthening PRIs. 1.3 Historical evolution of Panchayati Raj institutions. Soon after achieving independence, the Planning Commission came into existence in 1950 and began to plan for large-scale economic and social progress. It was by then commonly understood that actual all-round development could not be achieved until it is backed by the development of rural areas. The Planning Commission, therefore, thought of shaping the village development program so as to attack the 5 giants of hunger, poverty, disease, squalor, and ignorance through a self-help program of community development in 1952. These steps were designed to secure the involvement of rural people in the process of rural development. The inadequate success registered by these necessitated the need for reforms. In 1954, the Government of India established the Balwant Rai Mehta Committee for suggesting reforms in this regard, which submitted its report in 1957.1. Among others, the most important contribution of the report pertains to democratic decentralization and the proposed politico-administrative system at the grass roots. The report emphatically stated that So long as we do not discover or create a representative and democratic institution which will supply the local interest, supervision, and care necessary to ensure that expenditure of money upon local objects conforms with the needs and wishes of the locality, invest it with adequate power, and assign to it appropriate finances, we will never be able to evoke local interest and excite local initiative in the field of development. Balwant Rai Mehta is widely known as the architect of Panchayati Raj in India, and his birthday, 19th February, is observed as Panchayat Day. Balwant Rai Mehta Committee. The report recommended the creation of a three-tier system of democratic decentralization, which came to be known as the Panchayati Raj system. Namely, Gram Panchayat at the village level, Panchayat Samiti at the block level, and Jilla Parishad at the district level. It recommended that the entire development administration should be handed over to these bodies. The committee gave details of organization, functions, resources, and relations of one with the other. In brief, the village panchayat should be elected, with provision for the co-option of 2 women members and 1 member each from the SC and SENT communities. Panchayat Samiti should be constituted for the area included in a block by indirect election, that is, members of the panchayats within the block area will elect members of the Panchayat Samiti from amongst themselves. The committee emphasized the importance of a block and said, the block offers an area large enough for functions which the village panchayat cannot perform, and yet small enough to attract the interest and service of the residents. The third tier was to be occupied by the Jilla Parishad, whose main function would be to achieve necessary coordination between the Panchayat Samitis within the district. It will consist of presidents of Panchayat Samitis, members of parliament and state legislatures, and district-level officers of the development departments. The Jilla Parishad would be an advisory-cum-supervisory body, having no executive functions. The committee gave a broad blueprint for democratic decentralization, and it was left to each state to work out the structure and functional details best suited to its local conditions. Consequently, different patterns of Panchayati Raj emerged in different states. These recommendations were considered by the National Development Council (NDC) in January 1958, and democratic decentralization became a part of the national agenda. Panchayati Raj institutions did not take off successfully. In the 1960s, PRIs were portrayed as a god that failed. One of the main reasons for the failure was sabotage by state politicians who were not enthusiastic about devolving powers to the district level and below. State politicians were apprehensive that PRIs with real powers may pose a threat to their power and influence. The lack of resources, absence of coordination, dependence on district development staff, lack of delegation of effective authority, domination by the upper castes, and better-off sections of society had rendered the PRIs ineffective and purposeless as institutions of decentralization and development. By the middle of the 1970s, governments both at the center and in the states had become indifferent to PRIs, which had become defunct. Elections to these institutions had not been held in most places, and the sitting councils were either dissolved or suspended. The mid-70s marked a discernible shift of opinion in favor of conceding larger political space to local communities in the governing process. Local self-governing institutions were expected to play an important role in reordering societal power equations. As the Janata Party government had pledged its commitment to the Gandhian philosophy, the overall atmosphere seemed to be conducive for the resurgence of the Panchayati Raj institutions. Another plausible reason seems to be the fact that by the late 1970s the Green Revolution had become a decade old, and it had given birth to a rich peasant class who were fully aware of the importance of direct access to decentralized government machinery, more particularly its delivery system. The central place of PRIs was thus restored, Ashok Mehta Committee, in the late 70s. Another committee chaired by Ashok Mehta was given the task of revisiting the institutions of panchayats and making suitable recommendations to renew the Gandhian vision of village republics. The Ashok Mehta Committee Report 2 refused to accept the view that Panchayati Raj was a failed god. In fact, the committee credited these institutions with starting the process of democratic decentralization and making the citizens more conscious of their rights than before. Among other positive fallouts was the bridging of the gap between the bureaucratic elite and the people. The Ashok Mehta Committee was innovative in many ways. It recognized the importance of participation of political parties in Panchayati Raj elections to make them more accountable and to link Panchayati Raj institutions with the national political process. The committee also proposed reservation of seats for both women and weaker sections of society. The decline of the Janta government created a hostile climate for the implementation of the Ashok Mehta Committee report. In spite of this, the non-Congress state governments of Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, and West Bengal took concrete measures to reactivate the PRIs. In Karnataka, the PRIs that came into existence incorporated most of the recommendations made by the Mehta report, while non-Congress state governments were busy implementing the recommendations of the Ashok Mehta Committee. The new Congress government at the centre appointed other commissions. C.H. Hanumantharao's working group of 1983 and G.V.K. Rao Committee report of 1985 emphasized the need for integration of the Panchayati Raj system with development programs and administration. The concept paper on Panchayati Raj prepared by the L.M. Singhvi Committee report of 19,863 suggested that Panchayati Raj institutions should be closely involved in the planning and implementation of the rural development programs. Both the Singhvi and the Ashok Mehta committees recommended a constitutional basis for democratic decentralization, 1.473rd Constitutional Amendment, the 73rd and 74th Amendments to the Constitution in 1992 bestowed constitutional status on Panchayati Raj and Nagarpalika institutions. The main aim of the Panchayati Raj system envisaged under the 73rd Constitutional Amendment is the socio-economic development of rural India. Panchayati Raj has been designed to encourage rural people to actively participate in governance, thereby inculcating a habit of democratic living. It seeks to transform villages into self-governing and self-sufficient units, and thus imbue a sense of self-confidence among the villagers. It further acts as a system of education and training in the democratic process and ensures that local needs and development are attained through local efforts, some of the fundamental principles of the Panchayati Raj system as envisaged in the amendment are as follows. There should be a three-tier structure of local self-governing bodies at the village level, the intermediate block taluka level and the district level. With all three bodies being organically linked, there should be a genuine transfer of power and responsibilities to them. Adequate resources should be transferred to these bodies to enable them to discharge their responsibilities. All welfare and development schemes and programs at these levels should be channeled through these bodies alone, these bodies being charged with various duties and functions. No higher body should be given the opportunity to do what a lower body can do. The three-tier system should be such that it facilitates further devolution and dispersal of power and responsibility in the future. The amendment added a new Part 9 to the Constitution consisting of 16 articles and the 11th Schedule. The 11th Schedule contains 29 subjects on which the panchayats have administrative control. We will now look at the relevant constitutional provisions pertaining to different aspects of Panchayati Raj, structure of PRIs. Article 243 provides that the Gram Sabha may exercise such powers and perform such functions at the village level as the state legislature may by law provide. The Gram Sabha is envisaged as the foundation of the Panchayati Raj system. The Gram Sabha consists of all the residents of a village who are above 18 years of age and are on the electoral rolls of the village. Almost all the state acts identify the functions of the Gram Sabha. The functions include discussion on the annual statement of accounts, administration and reports, and selection of beneficiaries of anti-poverty programs. Drafting and implementation of development plans have to be vetted and monitored by the Gram Sabha. The state acts of Haryana, Punjab and Tamil Nadu give the power of approval of budget to the Gram Sabha. In the Panchayati Raj system, Gram Sabha is the only permanent unit. Tenure of a Panchayat I Mukhya and other members is for 5 years. But the villagers do not change. All the representatives in the PRIs are answerable and accountable to the Gram Sabha. Further, under laws like the Panchayati Raj Extension Act (PESA), Gram Sabha has been endowed with extensive powers to take decisions on all matters affecting it directly and locally. The Gram Sabha elects the Gram Pradhan and other members of the Gram Panchayat. Success or failure of the Panchayati Raj system depends largely upon the strength of the Gram Sabha. We will discuss the role and powers of the Gram Sabha in detail in the next unit of this block. Article 243b envisages 3 tiers of elected panchayats at the village level, the intermediate level, also known as the block or taluka level, and finally at the district level, and creates an organic linkage between the three. The constitution of intermediate panchayats is not mandatory and is dependent on the size of the population in that state. In states having a population of less than 20 lakhs, the state government may decide not to constitute intermediate panchayats. The obligatory functions of the Gram Panchayat include provision of safe drinking water, maintenance of public wells, ponds, dispensaries, primary and secondary schools, etc. Now they have also been assigned developmental functions like minor irrigation schemes, rural electrification, cottage and small industries, and poverty alleviation programs. The block-level PRI institution is known by different names in different parts of the country. For example, in Gujarat they are called Taluka Panchayat, in UP, Kshetra Samiti, and in MP, Janpada Panchayat. The powers of the Panchayat Samiti include provision of improved variety of seeds and fertilizers, maintenance of schools, hospitals, roads, and implementing anti-poverty programs and supervising the functioning of the Gram Panchayat. The Jilla Parishad is the apex body of the PRIs. It approves the budgets and coordinates the activities of the Panchayat Samitis. It maintains educational institutions, irrigation schemes, and undertakes programs for the weaker sections. Article 243c enunciates the manner in which panchayats shall be constituted. The state legislatures, when identifying the territorial extents of various panchayats within their states, as far as may be practicable, shall ensure that all the panchayats are similar in size. Further, the ratio between the number of seats and the population of the panchayat area should be maintained as a constant. The experience of the last 15 years shows that panchayats covering a small area not only function better, but are also more financially viable. At the Gram Panchayat level, all the seats in a panchayat shall be filled in by direct election from the territorial jurisdiction of the panchayat. Reservation of seats. The constitutional scheme seeks to redress caste and gender discrimination by providing for mandatory reservation for women and members of the SC and SENT communities in the various tiers of the Panchayati Raj system. Article 243d provides for 33% reservation for women in panchayat institutions as well as for the position of chairpersons. Rural women, who for centuries have lived in conditions of malnutrition, illiteracy and powerlessness, are now taking leadership roles in addressing these very issues. This article further provides for the reservation of seats in these bodies for SCs and STs, according to their proportion in the population in that panchayat. For example, if citizens belonging to SC communities constitute 17% of the local population, then 17% of the seats in the PRIs shall be reserved for them. 1/3 of the total seats reserved for SC and SENT communities shall be reserved for women belonging to these communities. Thus, in the above mentioned example, not only will 17% of the seats be reserved for SCs and STs, 1/3 of the 17% will be reserved for women belonging to SC and SENT communities, which will be counted towards the 33% reservation for women of the total number of posts of chairpersons available in a state. There shall be reservation of seats for SCs and STs according to their proportion in the population. In that state, of the total number of posts of chairpersons available in a state, 33% shall be reserved for women. However, the posts reserved for women will be identified on rotation basis so that every panchayat at some point of time or the other is chaired by a woman. The extent of reservation that is permissible under this provision was debated in the case of Krishna Kumar Mishra v. State of Bihar, 4, where the following main issues were agitated before the Patna High Court. I. Constitutional validity of reservation in panchayat elections. 2. Determination of permissible limit of reservation in panchayat elections. After considering these issues and interpreting various provisions of the Constitution and the Bihar Panchayati Raj Act, the High Court held that reservation can be made in the matter of panchayat elections in favor of scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and backward classes. However, it was clarified that the limit of such reservation cannot exceed 50% of the total seats. The court further held that no reservation can be made against solitary seats like that of Mukhya of Gram Panchayat, Pramukh of a Panchayat Samiti or Adhyaksha of a Jilla Parishad. Principle of subsidiarity. Article 243c. 3. Enunciates the principle of subsidiarity between the various tiers of the Panchayati Raj system. The article provides that the state legislatures may by law provide for the representation of a. Chairpersons of panchayats at the village level in the panchayats at intermediate level. B. Chairpersons of panchayats at the intermediate level in the panchayats at district level. C. Member of Legislative Assembly representing constituencies falling wholly or partly in a panchayat area, in intermediate or district level panchayats, but not in the village level panchayats. D. Member of Legislative Council being registered as electors within a panchayat area at the intermediate level. In that panchayat at the intermediate level, and if they are electors of a panchayat area at the district level, then in the district level panchayat. The article, while providing for subsidiarity, clearly mentions that the person so represented shall have equal voting rights as the other members of that panchayat. 1.5 Elections. State Election Commission. Article 200 of the Constitution provides for the creation of a constitutional body called the State Election Commission, SEC, to be constituted in each state for the express purpose of conducting elections to all the Panchayati Raj institutions. They are not charged with the responsibility of conducting elections to the state legislatures. The SEC, which has been created on the lines of the Election Commission of India, has been vested with similar powers and responsibilities, conducting regular and fair elections after the completion of the 5-year term by the panchayats, and within 6 months of their dissolution, is the responsibility of the State Election Commission. The SEC is charged with the exclusive task of supervision, superintendence, direction and control of the preparation of electoral rolls and the conduct of elections, exclusively to all Panchayati Raj institutions. The SEC is also required to specify the symbols that may be chosen by candidates contesting any election, issue voter identity cards, and deal with the issues of qualifications and disqualifications of candidates. The governor of the concerned state has powers to appoint a state election commissioner to head the SEC to be qualified for such an appointment. A person should, at the time of appointment, be holding a post of principal secretary to the government or a higher post. The tenure of the state election commissioner is protected by law so as to give him the necessary freedom to discharge his functions without fear or favor. Though the appointment is a political appointment, The method of removal of a state election commissioner is similar to the removal of a high court judge and is a long and arduous process. The Constitution mandates the timely conduct of elections to all PRIs every 5 years at the end of the term of the PRIs. However, it has been found that in a large number of states, elections are not being held on time or was still have not been held at all since the 73rd Amendment. It was in this context that an NGO, called the Rural Litigation and Entitlement Kendra, filed a writ petition against the state government of Uttar Pradesh and other states, 5, for violating constitutional norms by not conducting timely elections to PRIs. In this case, the Supreme Court observed that holding of elections is very important in any democratic system, and Article 243K imposes an obligation on the state government to conduct elections within a period of 5 years or immediately after the dissolution of an existing panchayat. The apex court observed that, despite it being a constitutional mandate, state governments do not hold timely elections. The provisions relating to elections are mandatory, and Article 243E of the Constitution prescribing the duration of panchayats is completely binding. On the main question of irregularity of elections to the Gram Panchayat in the various states, the Supreme Court further observed that it is necessary to emphasize that various clauses of Article 243 are to be followed in letter and spirit. The concerned states cannot be permitted to withhold elections of panchayats except in cases of genuine supervening difficulties to hold such elections, e.g. unforeseen natural calamities in the state like flood, earthquake, etc., or extremely urgent situation prevailing in the state for which elections of the panchayats cannot be held within the time frame. It will be unfortunate if the concerned states remain insensitive to the constitutional mandate of holding election of panchayats in time. Some critical issues. The most basic qualification to be eligible to contest an election to a panchayat, apart from being a citizen of India, is the need to be a member of the constituency and be listed as a voter on the voters list of that area. Of course, one has to be a major and be at least 21 years old to contest these elections. While most state acts have not added too many other conditions, certain disqualifications have been prescribed. The most controversial of these being the two-child norm. Let us discuss this in detail here. Two-children norm. In 1992, Rajasthan introduced the two-children norm, thereby barring persons having more than 2 children from contesting elections or holding any positions in the PRIs. This was soon followed by the states of Haryana, Madhya Pradesh, Andhra Pradesh, and Orissa. Though the acknowledged intention behind the introduction of this bar is population control, it is important to note that this rule is inconsistent with the National Population Policy 2000 that does not support or recommend population control through any coercive actions or penalties. The constitutional validity of this norm was challenged in the cases of Javed v. State of Haryana 6 and Rameshwar Singh v. State of Haryana 7. Disqualification from contesting an election on having more than 2 living children was the main question raised in these appeals. The second appeal of Rameshwar Singh more specifically challenged the constitutional validity of Section 175, 1Q, and 171, 1 of Haryana Panchayati Raj Act, 1994, whereby anybody having more than 2 children was disqualified from contesting elections for local bodies. The main argument was on the ground that these norms are violative of Articles 25 and 26 of the Constitution. Dismissing the appeals, the Supreme Court held that said condition is not arbitrary. No fault can be found with the state for having enacted the legislation. The disqualification contained in the Act is neither arbitrary nor discriminatory. Disqualification seeks to achieve socio-economic welfare and health care of the masses and is consistent with national population policy. Disqualification on the right to contest an election by having more than 2 living children does not contravene any fundamental right The assumption underlying these norms is that these grassroots leaders will become the role models for the rural population, leading to a ripple effect amongst the rest of the rural population. However, studies conducted by various NGOs aid on the effect of this norm has shown that women candidates and candidates belonging to scheduled castes and scheduled tribes were the most affected and accounted for a greater number of victims of this policy. The effects of this policy can be summarized as under. It was found that women panchayat leaders have been affected in disproportionately greater numbers since action is taken under this rule on the basis of just a complaint and, without any investigation, most of the affected belong to the weaker sections of society like women, SCs, STs and BCs, as this rule restricts the number of children a family can have. It adversely affects women, as the norm tends to encourage sex selective abortion. The rule also violates basic human rights. It violates the right of women to a life of dignity and a right to participate equally in the governance of their country. It also violates their reproductive rights. There have been instances when elected members are known to have left their wives or abandoned the third girl child in order to continue holding their posts, thereby adversely affecting women and girl children. The underlying assumption that women are in control of their fertility is incorrect, as women, especially in rural India, are still not in complete control over their fertility or have any say in the number of children they bear. Though challenge to the constitutional validity of this norm was upheld by the Supreme Court, various NGOs and social activists working together after intense struggle and campaigning were able to convince certain state governments of the adverse impact of this norm. Consequently, in April 2005, Himachal Pradesh became one of the few states to have abolished this law. Hopefully, other state governments will follow suit. Migrant labor. One of the problems related to elections in rural areas is the question of high rate of migration of the residents and their consequent inability to exercise their right to vote and participate in the governance process. It has been observed that over the years, the number of migrant labor has increased substantially due to the problem of unemployment in rural areas. There have been suggestions for remedying this problem on the lines of arrangements made for providing voting rights to migrants from Kashmir and other parts of the country. It is only fair to guarantee the right to vote to workers moving out of their villages' constituencies in search of work for survival. While it is agreed that this would require funds and efforts for implementation, both in terms of personnel to create voters lists, protection against breach of security during transit, etc., it would be a worthwhile exercise in the long run. 1.6 Analysis of working of PRIs in spite of the revolutionary changes brought about by the 73rd Amendment. It suffers from some serious limitations. 1. Ambiguity about the role and powers of Gram Sabha. The constitutional amendment does not mention the powers and functions of the Gram Sabha. It only says that the Gram Sabha will perform the functions which may be assigned to it by the state legislature. In the laws enacted by most of the states, the Gram Sabha is reduced to a powerless body which will routinely put a rubber stamp on the decisions taken by the Gram Panchayat. The Chief Minister's Conference held in August 1997 at New Delhi ruled that it would be necessary to vest in the Gram Sabha powers to sanction and disburse benefits in open meetings, to decide location of drinking water, hand pumps, etc., without having to refer the matter to officials or other authorities. This conference also held that it is necessary to vest the ownership of natural resources in Gram Panchayat and also the decision-making powers concerning the management of an income from such resources in the Gram Sabha to bureaucratic control. Another important limitation of the PRIs after the amendment is that they still function within the grip of the state bureaucracy under state laws. Wide powers of suspension and dismissal have been vested in the bureaucracy. This places PRIs in a position of disadvantage vis-a-vis even middle-rung functionaries of state governments. It also takes away the essential characteristic of PRIs as elected representative bodies. In some states, even Gram Panchayat have been placed in a position of subordination vis-a-vis intermediate panchayats. Such provisions which undermine the autonomy of PRIs adversely affect the concept of democratic decentralization. Instances have been reported where Gram Panchayat sarpanches have to spend extraordinary amount of time visiting block offices. The village pradhan has to contact the block office several times in a month for technical and financial sanctions. Such a system needs to be changed. Village bodies should be able to spend funds on their own without having to take approval from government officials. These interactions with the block staff distort the role of a sarpanch, who is an elected representative of the Gram Sabha, and encourages corruption. 3. Inadequate staffing. The constitutional amendment does not mention employees of panchayats and their administrative autonomy. Panchayats in the past failed to deliver because they had inadequate control over people working to implement the programs. Even when responsibilities in the field of health and primary education have been transferred, PRIs have no control over the staff and the budget of these departments. 4. Lack of adequate devolution. So far, progress on fiscal and functional decentralization has been disappointing. The primary function of panchayats in all the three tiers is the preparation of plans for economic development and social justice. R243G. Except Kerala, no other state has taken any positive step to devolve funds, functions and functionaries to the PRIs to enable the panchayats to discharge this constitutionally mandated function properly. Further, it is imperative that the PRIs have resources to match the responsibilities placed on them. While state finance commissions have submitted their recommendations, very few states have implemented these or taken the necessary steps to ensure fiscal viability of the PRIs. 5. Connecting the three tiers in the structure of the panchayats at the three levels, Gram, Taluka and Jilla. There ought to be a system of representation of Gram Panchayat presidents in the Taluka Panchayat, with the president of the Taluka Panchayat being elected directly. A similar system ought to be in place for Jilla Panchayats too. The indirect election of Jilla Taluka Panchayat president leads to malpractices and undesirable compromises, motivated by money, muscle and power. 6. Linkages with Member of Parliament Local Area Development, MPLAD. Presently, monies earmarked for MPLAD are spent solely at the discretion of individual MPs. The implementation of MPLAD schemes is through the collectors and not through the network of panchayat institutions. This must be altered and PRIs should be made the principal agency. The MPLAD funds should be deposited with the Zilla Parishad as untied funds. MPs may indicate their preferences for schemes programs to the Jilla Parishad Block Panchayats Gram Panchayat, which should be implemented by panchayats as a part of the overall village area district plan. MPs and MLAs declare the specific details of the work done under the MPLAD and MLA fund at the completion of their term. As he should declare these details at the time of filling his nomination forms in the form of an affidavit. These details should be shared in the district planning committee and in Parliament with a full discussion, which should be open to questions. 7. Lack of adequate training and gender mainstreaming. Since women bear the brunt of most day-to-day problems, such as housing, security, clean water, sanitation, education, health services, and childcare, they usually display greater sensitivity about everyday needs of families and work towards addressing these problems when they are elected to power. The introduction of quota systems for women in local governments in many countries, including India, has changed the political landscape at the local level. However, women representatives in panchayats face certain constraints such as illiteracy, inability to express via written communication, difficulty in familiarizing with financial and statistical data, understanding the diverse rules and technical aspects of planning, budget, making, auditing, increase in work burden, higher expectations and new responsibilities, many roles to perform, and polarization of opinions. The existence of sufficient and accessible training programs will address these problems and empower women to meaningfully discharge their responsibilities as panchayat members. 8. Parallel bodies. In some development projects, the government has set up committees that are independent of panchayats, e.g., joint forest management committees, village education committees, water user groups, etc. Difficulties tend to surface in the interrelationship between multipurpose, elected bodies like panchayats and single-purpose user committees. The two types of bodies often exist at different levels, with one covering a single village and the other a cluster of villages, which makes synergy between them difficult. There is often confusion about which of the two types of bodies has jurisdiction over a particular subject. Such confusion is sometimes deliberately sown by politicians and/or bureaucrats at higher levels to weaken bottom-up development processes. Most or all members of user committees are often chosen by nomination rather than by election. The existence of parallel bodies, unless they are aligned with the work of the panchayats, will result in the alienation of panchayats, which will ultimately grow weak and inconsequential. 1.7 Institutional mechanisms for ensuring accountability. Two of the institutional mechanisms available to ensure accountability and transparency of PRIs are audit by the Gram Sabha and the Right to Information Act. Article 243J provides for audit of the accounts of the panchayats. Certain state governments have used this provision to mandate that the accounts of a panchayat have to be presented before the Gram Sabha, thus making the panchayat directly answerable to the people of the village. Social audit has been defined as the process by which details of financial and non-financial resources used for different development initiatives by state agencies is shared with the citizens. This process involves gathering of information from various sources, organizing of beneficiary groups, and scrutiny of the information. The Gram Sabha is thereby not only expected to but also empowered to play a vigilant role on PRIs, even though there are no formal policies to introduce social audit procedures within the panchayat systems. Civil society organizations have carried out social audits in various states. The Mazdoor Kisan Shakti Sangathan, MKSS, under its program Hamara Paisa, Hamara Hisab, engages with officials in charge of government schemes and local politicians. Their use of the public hearing or Jan Sunwai, where they read out government documents relating to schools, public works, and other development works of the area, is very effective. This creates more awareness amongst people about their right to information and the ways and methods of using information vis-à-vis government agencies. The Panchayats Extension to Scheduled Areas Act 1996 empowers the Gram Sabha to conduct social audits by vesting powers over minor forest produce, powers of expressing opinion regarding land acquisitions to be undertaken, certification of village works undertaken, etc. All these functions can be performed more effectively if the process under the RTI Act is properly used to tackle official apathy. The RTI Act 2005 and its state equivalent statutes are meant to facilitate the watchdog functions of citizens, to demand information from state agencies, which may throw crucial light on the way public resources have been used. The RTI Act can be effectively used to ensure that the spirit with which the 73rd Amendment has been passed is in fact implemented and the local people have a definite say in governance. Further, the practice of social audit conducted by the Gram Sabha also ensures that the most significant principle of democracy, that all the state institutions are basically answerable to the public at large, is implemented in its true sense. 1.8 Summary. Let us sum up the important points discussed in this unit. 9. We traced the historical evolution of Panchayati Raj institutions before discussing the 73rd Constitutional Amendment pertaining to the structure and composition of PRIs. The main aim of the Panchayati Raj system envisaged under the 73rd Constitutional Amendment is the socio-economic development of rural India. Panchayati Raj has been designed to encourage rural people to actively participate in governance and seeks to transform villages into self-governing and self-sufficient units. 9. The 73rd Amendment provides for a three-tier structure of local self-governing bodies at the village level, the intermediate block taluka level and the district level, with all three bodies being organically linked. Adequate resources should be transferred to these bodies to enable them to discharge their responsibilities. All welfare and development schemes and programs at these levels should be channeled through these bodies alone. Reservation in panchayats is mandatory for women and members of SC and SENT communities. We discussed some critical issues concerning disqualification of a person from contesting panchayat elections. We concluded by analyzing the functioning of Panchayati Raj institutions and identifying some important issues that need to be addressed to ensure effective decentralized governance by panchayats. Thank you. Subscribe to our channel for more updates, and we will see you with the next chapter.